Have you lost your job? Have you lost a loved one? Are you exhausted caring for your parents, for your kids? Well, you can find immediate relief when you read Sheila Mack's new #1 bestseller, Bootstraps and Bra Straps. It contains the Boots formula to move from rock bottom back into action in any situation, especially right now. If life has knocked you down, pick yourself up with Bootstraps and Bra Straps. Get your copy at www.SheilaMack.com today.
Are you ready for a reboot? Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. History reminds us those hit hardest often become the change makers. This year, we've all hit crazy economic, social, and emotional rock bottoms. We all get knocked down. Something hits globally, locally, personally. It affects our health, finances, our relationships. We have to recreate a business or career. Each show, Sheila and her special guest will be sharing their reboot stories, guiding you with real solutions to upgrade and up-level emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, and financially. Here on NBC's KCAA Radio, Mondays at 1 and Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Pacific Time. If you're ready to pull yourself up by the bootstraps and bra straps, enjoy a listen. Here's Sheila.
Welcome to the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your life on your terms. I'm Sheila Mack, your host, and here we have special guest ERIKA Gray. She is UCSF trained pharmacist, educator, and national speaker, and she's also the co-founder and chief medical officer of ToolBox Genomics. Am I saying it right?
You are, Genomics, yes.
Genomics. And MyToolBox Genomics. She has spoken extensively about the role of genetics in various health conditions on a variety of platforms, including national television, having had several years of experience at a level 1 trauma center in both the patient pharmacy and emergency room. Dr. Gray has a firsthand understanding of the terrible manifestations of chronic disease and the importance of preventative precision medicine. All right, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sheila. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes, and this show is based on my best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this year we have had so many situations. Oh my goodness, yes. And I would love to hear about your journey, maybe in your personal life or in your business, a time where you've hit a rock bottom like we've all hit this year, and how you got back on track.
So as a startup, finances they play a huge role. I mean, you truly live and die by them. And 2 years ago, it was December 21st, our CEO called us and said, we're out of money. There is no money. I don't know how we're going to continue. I don't have any investors. And by the way, your pay is now cut. So there's no pay for anybody. And we've got to figure this out. And I remember looking at my husband going, well, how do you have Christmas in light of this? How do you move forward when something that you're super passionate about and this is what you really want to do, and then all of a sudden like this just curveball from left field comes? And I'm sure all of us have been in these different situations, whether it's health or personal, where you think things are going along really well, and then behind the scenes, it's chaos. Mm-hmm. And it was such a dawning of realization, because it was, well, do I quit? Do we end it now because there's no money? Is this the end and you have to pivot? And so our CEO said, you always have to keep the faith, because you never know what's on the other side of it. And he said, just let me worry about the money and I'll figure out a way. And I remember thinking, okay, but that's great, but I still need to do something. It's really, I can't leave it all in his hands, because that's just like throwing it up to the wind and not taking an active role in it. And so then I started picking up the phone and calling people and who can help me? What can we do? How can we be creative and figure out a way out of this? Because there's always a solution. There's always a possibility. You just have to keep at it and keep working through it. And we did. We ended up, someone called someone and said, hey, you can meet with so-and-so. And we ended up getting a huge investor involved, and he saved the day. He said, let us live for another set of months. But just really that realization of being faced with, this is rock bottom, because it's like, well, do you just shut the door? How do you handle this? And realizing that there are actually so many other options on the other side. But I think so many times we get paralyzed with this is the end, and we don't look to those other possibilities or opportunities.
Yes, I totally agree. And I think this year, many businesses have had that exact story play out.
Yes.
And the ones that have had the most success in staying afloat and getting by are the ones that involved every single person that worked for them or with them in the process, and being really honest about, this is where we're at right now. This is the orientation of where we're at. And now we have to do a plan. What's our order of operations on how to get from where we're at due to COVID and all these crazy situations nobody planned for, and how to get back on track. And it takes every single person on board to get that boat floating again. It really does.
It does. And I think it's absolutely fascinating also how certain people react, right? Because there's a lot of people who will just say, oh my gosh, this is it. I can't handle this. And then other people they feel more resilient. And in just the field of genetics, I have found that certain people, certain genotypes, especially around the COMT metabolizer, so it has to do with how we break down dopamine and epinephrine, norepinephrine in our brains. Some people are more prone to having that anxiety, that more narrow worldview versus, and so those are the slow COMTs. And then the fast COMTs, like, yes, let's do it. This is dynamic. It's different. It's fun. It's a dopamine rush for them. And so
I must be the second one, because I'm always like, let's roll up our sleeves. We've got this.
And for you, it's not overwhelming, right? It's not anxious. It's an opportunity.
Yes.
And for the slow COMTs, it can be paralysis, and it can be anxiety driven. And so oftentimes recognizing these strengths or these superpowers that we have is going to help us work better as a team. It's going to help us work better in our relationships, because we can say, I recognize that this is your knee-jerk reaction, but here's how we really need to get back on track. Because I think the thing that COVID taught us is you can't take anything for granted, and you have to be able to pivot. And those of us who are flexible and can pivot are going to make it through the best.
Right. And, it seems to me, I had an earlier conversation with another person, another guest, and we talked about relationships and how you need the feminine and the masculine. And I would imagine that these two different traits, gene traits, are both needed in order to get to resolve and get the boat floating again in business, get back on track.
Oh, absolutely. So my husband is slow and I'm average. So the average can kind of bebop a little bit between each other. And so when he will say, oh my gosh, I'm really concerned, then I come along and say, but do we really need to be that concerned? And let me bring my perspective. And if I'm out here saying, I can do everything, I can do all of this, then he does the reality check of, hold on a second, you only have 24 hours in a day. So let's really think this through. And helps keep me on track. So both of them are incredibly necessary for sure.
Yes. And, my daughter is just like me, and my sons are a little bit more on the chill side. So they were like, oh, okay, yeah, pandemic. Okay, cool. And what's for dinner? What's going on? My daughter are like, okay, quick. What do we have for reserves? What do we have? Do we need food? What's going to happen? And my daughter's going through this whole list of we're survivors, and and the boys are like, we're good. We got whatever. It's not a problem. I'm not even going to worry about it. So it was really funny how we reacted differently. and then
Yes.
how we got through all the interesting times that happened this year.
Absolutely. And the other part of it too is I think families had to interact so much more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people were starting to question, gosh, is this the best way for us to interact? How are we handling our family? Are we spending too much time on social media? We're already on our computers all the time. And so I think it was a great opportunity for everyone to really do a self check-in and say, is this how we want our lives to be? How can we change it? And we also had greater opportunities to cultivate new learning. People took up gardening and reading, and a lot of new hobbies came out of it. So I think there's some wonderful, wonderful features that we all got to cultivate as a result of this.
I agree. And, I go back to when I was running gift stores, and I opened my first gift store at 23, and it was 5,000 square feet, 5,000 a month, $1 square foot. Negotiated 6 months free, and I thought I could figure it out by then. And I did really well. I ended up having 5 stores. I bought the other 4 in California, and then later rented them out when I was kind of done with 14 years of running gift stores full time. But in that, I would bring all my employees to a breakfast once a week, and we would strategize together. And it was always a very open, transparent, this is the books, this is the numbers, this is what we're at. We need this. I need to, in order to pay everybody.
That's right.
Especially when I first started, most of the people that worked for me, I had 2 different lines of groups of people that worked for me. I had very young people that I had a job training partnership act with the government. And I would train at-risk youth to get back to actually have an opportunity to get a job and go through training all aspects of running a gift store so they could later be hired wherever else. And nobody wanted to hire them. They were out of foster care or what have you. The other group was highly professional salespeople, maybe from Nordstrom's or the Broadway back in the day, Macy's. And I'd end up meeting them and becoming friends and be like, hey, I've got this store and I can't pay you that much. And so they were 2, 3 times my age sometimes. And you know what I mean? And they're like, okay, so they had far more wisdom than I did and world knowledge. And I was like, okay, so we're all sitting down, and it didn't matter if it was the youngest. Some of the kids that were coming in had these creative ideas that we would have never thought of.
That's
that
right.
brought tons of sales or happier clients. We ended up getting musicians from 3rd Street Promenade in Santa Monica, California, and bringing them to the store. This was Montrose, California, up in the foothills. And we'd have these bands come out and play for free on the weekend. We stayed open until 10 or 11 at night next door to restaurants when all the other shops closed. So we got all the business in town.
It's just so smart.
2 years. And this was from one of the youngest employees that was there, youngest kids, because they were like, I like music. Let's have music here. And I was like, how can we do that? And I was young enough and open-minded enough to say, let's try it. Worst thing that can happen is nobody shows up. Everybody was showing up, and we'd have these really open conversations. And when I did finally start to downsize, I have 6 kids that I raised and fostered 3 to adopt and 3 of my own. And so at a certain point, I decided I want to be with the kids, and I got into teaching for a little while so that they could go to these great schools. And and with that, I had to shut the stores. Do you know, every single employee I made sure had another job to go to. And really
amazing.
But years later, we are still friends. We still talk. We still, they still send me a birthday card. I send them a birthday card. We connect. Because of that, it changed the way work was done. And I really feel, because there was so much heart in the business, it was helping the kids. It was, being involved. The rule was, I don't care if somebody's going to pay $1 for something or they're going to buy the whole store. They have to be treated like royalty when they come into the store. And it was that kind of a thing that people, during the slow months, those people that would come in to talk with people, and they were just lonely or whatever, and they wanted the free cup of tea we'd offer or whatever, they were the ones that carried our store in the summer. The slow months in gift stores, usually summertime. And so that was the secret to it. And we just had fun. And I know there was all different types of our our gene types there working together, and the strengths, those that had the strength in one area could carry us. And it was so fun. It was a good experience.
And I think you touch upon a couple really important things, is that, having heart, people tell you that all the time. And I was able to bring together an incredible team for my business because people said, I love your passion. I love your vision. I want to work for you. I don't really care what I do, but they're just so excited about it. And I think that really reinforces that old adage of people don't quit companies, they quit bad managers. And so when people feel like they're heard and they've got your back, you have their back and you're an advocate for them, and transparency. Oh my gosh. I mean, I feel that I understand that, sometimes you don't want to share everything with employees, but for heaven's sakes, if you have a small team, it goes a long way, because it evens that playing field and it makes people feel like, yes, I am a part of this team. I matter. My contributions matter. And really hearing what other people have to say, because we have our own thought processes and what we think are best. And as you said, having those young kids just bring kind of some off the wall comment, like, I like music. I mean, who would have known? And you get this incredible idea, but it also is so helpful for the employees because they go, wow, look at this idea I brought, and look at what the executive team decided to do with it, or what my manager decided to do with it. And I wish we did more of that in our culture, where we really encourage that creativity and that everybody's opinion, doesn't matter where you are in the company, has value and really can bring that additional perspective that you may not have ever even thought about.
Yes. And I think one of the other things is, this year, especially if you are leader of your home, leader in your business, or if you just started that job yesterday, you can be the leader with how you show up. It's who you're being and all you're doing. And this year, having people show up when other people may be in fear, stuff may be going on at home. Like I'm sure that time that you weren't sure if you were going to get paid or not, and if the company's going to survive or not, that's a fearful place. And so when you have people more grounded in it and you have open conversations, it's going to just ease that fear up, and then you have peace, and you get out of that. There's the survival mind that's not thinking as clearly, and you're in that brain, that part of your brain that you're not really clear. The ideas come when you're calm and you're able to meditate, think about it, take a moment and not be in fear and survival. And that's when you have your answers show up, like you did with your company.
Yes. And I think it's so interesting because when we're in a fear state, the cortisol is pouring. We're in that sympathetic nervous system. We're constantly activating. It's that fight or flight. And we know we can't think clearly. And so I think being able to acknowledge it, that yes, this is this moment, but let me, acknowledge it, and let's move on to something that's going to actually calm things down. And I think, the strategies of what is, like the book, one thing. What is the one thing I can do today, this hour, this minute, to move me forward, to feel like I'm back in control, to feel that I am actually making a difference or moving things forward. Because I think that's always the hardest thing. And I've struggled with it so much in the business is, well, I could do this and I could do that. And so you feel disoriented and fragmented, which leads to paralysis. So instead, getting focused, getting clear, what is that thing I'm going to work on this week, and then figuring those steps out is really, I think, some of the best ways to handle uncertainty.
So true. And if you're listening in today and you are, whoever you are, whether you're a business leader or new at the job, a really important thing to share. I don't know, Erika, have you heard of the 211?
No, I've heard of the 335. So tell me about the 211.
The 211 is the new 411, and this year it is incredibly important. So if you Google in the United States, If you Google 211 and Texas, or whatever state you're in, California, New York, you put that in Google, you're going to get a list of resources, whether that's mental health help, it's help getting out of an abusive situation, it's help finding medical care when you need it to do preventative exams and this and that, when you maybe lost your insurance and you couldn't pay the HIPAA or whatever it is, that extra insurance when you leave a company and you're stuck. There's all kinds of different programs and resources that are completely free for people. It may be that you need to find a food bank because you really, things didn't happen. Maybe that business did close. And so this way you're able to connect with what you need, the resources you need in your area as soon as possible. I'm like the unwritten spokesperson for the 211, because I think that this year more than ever, people that have never, ever had to need a resource ever in their lives, they need it this year.
Absolutely.
If they don't know, it's what you don't know that hurts you the most.
Oh, that's so true. And I love that idea that you can actually just see what is available in your area. Because again, when you have options, now that fear can start to die down and you can start to plan what you're going to do. And another thing that I discovered is, I don't know if you have a grocery outlet near where you are, but that store has been absolutely incredible because they carry incredible products that are really high end that you find at Whole Foods and all of those more expensive stores, and they sell it for a fraction of the price. So you can get things like Primal Kitchen, which makes really high quality marinades and mayo that doesn't have the sugar in it. It doesn't have canola oil. They have grass-fed beef. They have produce. They have mercury-free tuna. I mean, you have to go and you have to look. But to know that you have that resource there, I mean, it's just been amazing to shop there. And I've saved so much on our grocery bills just going there.
That's so nice. All those little things add up. Like, we actually get everything from a farm that's local now. As far as, vegetables, they do frozen vegetables and they do grass-fed and all that. And it's like the eggs are sustainable and you can actually see how they're moving the chickens and keeping everything clean, and it's you get to visit the farm. It's really cool, and it's something I would have never considered. Believe it or not, I save money, a ton of money. And my neighbors and we all go in together, so we buy a big batch and save even more, and then we just split it up, and it works out just fine. So there's always these different resourceful ways. I think connecting in community makes a big difference. If you need support, find a support group. I'd love to hear more about the genome and genomics studies and what that's all about.
Yeah. So, I always liken it to when you purchase a new piece of equipment or a bookcase or a piece of furniture, the first thing we usually do is consult the instruction guide. Now, I know some people try to jerry-rig it and do it themselves, but in the general rule, we look at the instruction guide. But when we practice medicine, or when we're thinking about what should we be taking, we just say, well, what did I read? What sounds good? What is my neighbor doing? But we never look at our own personal instruction guide. And we have that. It's our DNA. And now it has become accessible and cost effective enough that people can actually purchase it and get insights about where are their nutritional deficiencies, what food allergies, gluten sensitivity, lactose, what type of sleep they might have, which is really critical right now, fragmented sleep, lack of deep sleep. And then the one I was talking about, the COMT, it's like, are you more of the warrior where you're constantly anxious about things, or are you more of that warrior? And that's just the label they've come up with in some of the literature. And then what about your gut health? What about your skin? Because when you have that information, you're going to make more thoughtful choices about it. And so, for example, someone who has the genes to be sensitive to gluten and might develop celiac, that we're not saying don't ever eat gluten, but be mindful that when you do eat gluten, it's going to tax your immune system. It's going to raise inflammation in your body. So maybe that rash, that headache, that brain fog, that inability to lose weight, that might all be going back to that gluten that you're eating, and gluten masquerades in all kinds of different products as well. So it's bringing that awareness and that attention to the details of what is residing in your body and what you can do about it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I've got to get that test. It sounds awesome. And I mean, have you ever noticed, I think about this, I noticed you can have 10 people and they could all do the same exact thing, same exercise routine, same eating routine, and you'll have different results.
Oh my gosh. So
because of all this is it.
So I always, when I do a weight management talk, I love comparing my results to my co-founder, because when you look at hers, she has literally zero genes in any of the weight gain sections. Yeah. And before we started getting into this, she would say, oh yes, I could out eat the football players, and I can eat whatever I want. And I remember thinking, just for that little moment, like, oh, you can eat everything you want. I can't.
Right.
When I looked at our genetics, I was like, well, there it is. It's really, really clear now. And so again, it's just that recognition of, I have to live my life a little bit differently. It's not a bad thing. This is nothing to be ashamed of. This is the gift I was given. These are the cards I was dealt. But how I choose to actually play those cards is really what matters. And I think the problem that we get into is we try to bluff the hands we've been dealt. And we can bluff only so long before we bust.
Yes. And I mean, I think that awareness makes a big difference. People that aren't aware, there's a lot of pressure. Eating or drinking is a very social thing. I've got celiac, I've got PCOS. I can't do a lot of that stuff. I don't ever drink. Alcohol is pure sugar. I can't do that. I can, but it will show up and it will not be friendly. It'll be like, what? That was one glass of wine. Are you kidding me? And so it's a different thing for everybody. I remember living with a friend, a roommate, for a little while when my house burned down in 2017, which was why I wrote my book. That was kind of the inception of that, how to get back on track after a tough situation. And she was like, Sheila, you eat so clean and so healthy. And I was like, this isn't even as clean and healthy as I usually eat. Like I've been gaining weight since I've been staying with you, because off a little bit. She's like, really? How do you do that? And I'm like, that's just the way it works for me. And I have to honor that. And when I don't, it shows up really fast. I mean, like super fast, and I'll feel it in my energy or my brain, or, you won't be as clear, whatever. So I have to eat kind of like special high grade fuel, like a Lamborghini or something. I can't just have food and alcohol. It's a real gift. I probably saved a fortune in my life.
Oh my gosh. Well, and but it's true though, because really, when people come to practitioners, right, they come with a chief complaint, and you are kind of chasing this chief complaint down the trajectory, but we never stop and say, well, hold on a second. What's the nutritional component that could be playing into this? What are the detoxification pathways that may be affecting it? Why is it that certain people don't seem to, they seem to be more sensitive, right? There's people, they have mold sensitivity, they have fragrance sensitivity. Where does this come from? And I think it's very easy for those of us who don't suffer with it to say, well, come on, like seriously, fragrance sensitivity, like get on with it already. Right. But if you have such an impaired detoxification pathway, anything's going to be affecting you. And so it enables you to recognize and say, okay, this is what's going on with me. This is my journey. This is what I need to deal with. And I think it also gives you those tools to be able to say no and yes, because really it's that in-between part with willpower that I think is deadly for us. I'm writing a book called The Moderation Myth, because I'm just so tired of people saying, well, I'm just going to drink in moderation. I'm just going to eat gluten in moderation. It's like you said, I have one glass of wine. That's not going to work. Yeah. And for most people, they say, but Sheila, you're being moderate. How come you can't handle that? And it's like, it doesn't work for my genetics. It doesn't work for my body. And, I think we set our lives up with the greatest of intention. But we forget that willpower declines over the day. And so we're making all of these decisions. And so by the end of the day, I feel like that's when we start invoking the moderation part. I worked out this morning, ergo I can do this. I slept in this morning, therefore, and we use it to justify our behavior because our brain is smart. It wants us to be able to do certain things that's going to bring it joy, so to speak. But we it's like this disconnect between what our brain is saying, yes, this is going to work, and we've justified it, but is it really going to nourish and sustain our bodies? And it usually does not.
Right. I mean, I had to give up coffee.
Oh,
Not for your for your sugars, which is part of the PCOS insulin resistance thing. And I was like, but that's like the only thing I have left.
That brings me joy.
I've given up so many other things. Okay, great. And you know what? I thought for sure that I was going to be exhausted. Like, I'm already tired. How am I going to do this? Do you know when I gave up coffee within a week after that, initial, I don't know, it's almost like withdrawals. I'll tell you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
After that, I can sleep. I can go on less sleep when I need to. I can do more, and I don't get the drops. I don't get that exhaustion at 3 o'clock anymore. I mean, I have no sugar in my life at all, except for stevia and monk fruit right now. And for many years, I've had to do that. And so it's the only thing that was affecting that energy level and making it worse was coffee. And then I'd go have more, and it would get worse, and it affected everything else. And so really, I feel happier and healthier and younger than I did when I was drinking all that coffee. And it's something so simple.
That's right. That's right. And I think, so many times we're scared to make that jump and say, but we can't. And we create these self-limiting beliefs, and we don't realize that's those self-limiting beliefs that are actually preventing us to get to that next level of happiness, of health, of prosperity. Because we've told ourselves this story and we believe that story, truly body, mind, and soul, until someone challenges us to step out of it and say, let's look at the data. Let's look at what's going on with you and see what we can do to change that.
Awareness. I mean, like tell me about these tests. How does one go about getting these tests?
It is a simple spit in the tube. Uh-huh. And what you do is that once you spit in the tube, we send it up. You will send it off to the lab, and then it will get sequenced. And then the results are going to come back to you in an app. And then you actually are going to get to see what are your predispositions around diet, the exercise, the lifestyle. I really love it from an exercise perspective because I was convinced I could do the HIIT exercises because I really wanted the 4-minute workouts because I was like, this is going to be the secret to my success, until I found I had all endurance genes. I have slow twitch muscles. So for me to get the benefit, I can't do these HIIT type exercises because I'm just not going to see it. So when I actually switched to doing more endurance type workouts, all of a sudden I was like, okay, now I can actually see my body changing because I was working with my genetics versus against them. And so this is why I feel like everyone should get tested, because then you're going to be able to make more conscious decisions. Do I need more B12? Do I need the folate? Do I need methylfolate? Do I need that activated form?
Oh, yes. Both of my gene sides don't have that MTHR. And I was like, wow, what's going on? I'm so tired. Why am I exhausted? And then of course I was pouring in more coffee back then. And it's like, you just take this simple B12, and I wasn't freezing all the time. I wasn't as tired. It would be 70 degrees and I would have like a coat on. And it was ridiculous. So,
yes. And so this is literally a simple nutrient, and it's cheap. And people don't realize that folic acid does not equal the 5-MTHF version of folate. It's active, so your cells can use it right away. Because when you consume folic acid, and there's a lot of folic acid in your cereals, in your bread, take a look at your multivitamin, because I guarantee most people it's going to say folic acid. that your body actually has to go through several steps to convert it into the form that the cells need. And if you have an enzyme, this MTHFR enzyme, which is affectionately called something else, I'll let people figure out, extrapolate on that one. The enzyme is slow to make the conversion. So you get this backlog of these forms of folic acid that aren't getting into the cell. So when they don't get into the cell, they can't work with B12. You're going to get increase in homocysteine levels, which leads to inflammation. It's inflammatory to the arteries. It's not good for your heart. It's not good for your brain. And now your detox pathways aren't working as well. You're not making methyl groups. You're not supporting your DNA synthesis. And this is why folic acid, specifically the methyl form of folic acid, is so important when you're pregnant or you want to be pregnant or you're on birth control pills because those deplete B vitamins. Yeah. So if you're thinking about having kids and you're on birth control pills, you need to be on a really, really good quality B vitamin with the activated forms. And you may need some extra in there too, because you want to make sure you have enough in the reserves should you choose to get pregnant.
And it was really interesting for me. I don't know what it was, but I would go in once in a while and get the B shots, not knowing I had this gene situation going on. And I'd be like, and then I'd rest and then I'd have all this energy.
Yes.
And so I said, well, I just keep paying for these shots, which were really expensive compared to just taking this little vitamin. But I didn't know. And I had flown back from India and I got really sick, anemic, and I went to the doctor and I said, I am so sick. And it was one of those doctors that was a little more modern and said, well, let's test all your vitamins. Let's see what's going on. And they found that gene situation with the MTHR or whatever it's called, the B12. What is
B12? It? Yeah, so there's the FUT2 gene, TCN, CUBN. So that deals with transport, absorption. So just depending on which ones you have an issue with, you may not be able to take a B12 capsule. You might have to take the lozenge so you start absorbing it in your mouth. Mm-hmm. And then the two work together.
Yes. And I'm telling you, I was so cold on the plane, people were looking at me like I was crazy because I was shivering.
Oh my gosh. That must have been miserable.
I was like, something is not right. This is really bad. And I had stopped eating. It was like a vegetarian, vegan kind of thing for, staying at this beautiful place in India. And I wasn't getting any vitamins. And because I'm celiac, I couldn't even eat much of the food that was offered. So I was like, I had green beans, I think, a lot of for 2 weeks or something. And it was very, very limited. And that just dropped whatever I had. And I didn't take a lot of vitamins with me for the trip either. And
yes.
But it was the gift of finding out this very simple thing. And they told me, and you probably know the numbers better than I do, but I think it's like 1/3 of the population has this situation. And
yes. So it's right around 30% of the population has at least one variant. So it means that enzyme is going to work slower. And then there's two actual, they call them SNPs. So within the MTHFR family, there's more, but there's two that we focus on. So if you have both of those, now that enzyme is potentially working even slower. Mm-hmm. And then we also always want to look, what's happening upstream as well in those different processes. So I just, as a general rule, I think everyone needs to, of course, get their levels checked. You can check a red blood cell folate level. That's a really good one to look at. You don't want to get a folic acid level because everyone's is high. And then all the practitioners say, it's a high, you're fine. This isn't the issue. Well, we're not looking at it in the cell. That's where we care about it because that's where the magic happens. Same thing with B12. If you test B12, you also want to look at methylmalonic acid. It's a byproduct, so we know what's happening. And that is going to give you so much insight into, as you were mentioning, fatigue, the brain fog, even your memory, all of those. And then, of course, inflammation, which is super important. And the other thing I was going to mention is that because you were eating a vegetarian and vegan diet, you weren't getting the amino acids from the protein. And a lot of people forget that you need a low pH in your stomach to absorb B vitamins. So a lot of times, some of you may be taking B vitamins, but your numbers aren't improving, or you're not feeling better. You might need to take a little apple cider vinegar with your food, or take some type of digestive enzyme that's going to have something like betaine in it that's going to help lower the stomach pH, so now you can absorb those nutrients.
Mm-hmm. Yes, simple things like this test are going to make all the difference. So now we're coming to the end of our interview time, and I'd love to have you share how people can connect with you, maybe get this test and learn more about all you're doing.
So you can follow me personally at the Gene Whisperer with an ER, and I'm on Instagram, and so I post different things of what I'm doing, what's new, and then you can actually get this test at MyToolBox Genomics, and so that you'll order it, you'll get the app, and then all of the results will be on that app for you. So it makes it really convenient, and it's just mytoolboxgenomics.com.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you again for being a guest on the show, and we will be back shortly. All right. Stay tuned.
Thanks, Sheila.
Thanks. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. A brief portion of the chapter on careers from my new best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. And this year we have had so many situations. This is a great holiday book to share with family and friends. And also, it is my birthday month. I was born on a Thanksgiving Day years ago, and my birthday is showing up on Thanksgiving again this year. So grab a copy, and I will be donating a copy or course for each book or course sold to women in shelters across the U.S. So now take a listen. If you are just tuning in, this is the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest. Here we have real people sharing real stories and actionable steps to help you reinvent, rebuild, and reboot your business and personal life on your terms. I'm your host, Sheila Mack, and today we had special guests discussing following your bliss. Wow, talking about a career choice where Jeff went from starting to learn accounting to then following his bliss, and he ended up teaching and running programs in his field of interest at the college that he actually left years earlier. So when you follow your bliss and when you do what your soul guides you to do, it seems that things do fall into place and life gets easier. So keep that in mind. And right now, I'd love to share a short excerpt from my new chapter on careers in the best-selling book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. The book is available on Audible, Amazon, Kindle, and also at www.sheilamack.com. And if you go to my website there, you also can receive a free introduction mini course on the introduction to the Boots formula, which is the formula used throughout the book that's helped many thousands of people get back on track during their tough situations. All right, so here's a chapter on careers. Take a listen. Chapter 6. Working hard for the money. Careers. I've gone to the same woman's spa since I was 18 years old. I first saw this oasis called Sheila's Spa in a magazine my dear friend Julie gave me when I was in a holding placement camp awaiting my emancipation hearing. That story to come too. Before I'd ever heard about vision boards, I cut out that article and put it on the wall over my bed. I told myself one day I know I'll go to Sheila's Spa. It even has my name on it. By the time I was 18 years old, I was working at JPL and starting to sell things at the swap meet on the side. Finally, I was able to afford to go on my first trip to Sheila's Spa. although the owner Sheila Clough renamed the spa the Oaks at Ojai. Every single year since, often 2 or 3 times a year, I would stay at the spa, sometimes for a month or more. When I first started going, I could only manage to pay for a 3-day weekend pass. I worked from the spa, running my business and enjoying the retreat. Sometimes I'd help out with a couple of classes or with a program as my way to give back. I came to know all those beautiful ladies from around the world. It was a woman's community, a safe place to just relax and connect. This was truly my second family, and I have so much gratitude for the Clough family and all the people who helped create the spa environment I called my second home. The spa was opened for more than 45 years until it was caught in the Ventura fire and sustained so much damage that they had to permanently close. Until that day, it had been open 24/7. They literally hadn't closed their doors until the fire shut them down. Some of the employees had worked at the spa since it first opened its doors, the only job they'd had for the bulk of their adult lives. It was a beautiful place to work and became like a second home for those employees. And just like that, it disappeared. Everybody in the whole community lost their jobs, not just the spa, but other local businesses that depended on the people the spa attracted from all over the world to stay in their little town. Some of the employees had to relocate, and obviously, this wasn't planned. They all lost their income very suddenly, unexpectedly, and dramatically. They couldn't see it coming or make other plans. After December 2017, all the women working at the spa had to reinvent themselves, start over, and rebuild their lives. From shift to gap. Not all career shifts are as dramatic as the one those women were thrust into, but most women will experience at least one career shift at some point in her life, if only as she moves into or out of the workforce. Different career shifts may occur at different stages of life. Becoming a mom and having to pull back or take time off from the workforce, moving back into a workplace after a considerable amount of time off, where you may be dealing with a lot of changes, or confronting retirement. You may be moving from full-time to part-time, or the other way around, or even going from paid work to volunteer work. Whatever shift you are making, you are unlikely to find an even playing field. Statistically, women get paid less than men. In 2017, the U.S. Census Bureau determined that women working full-time, year-round, earned only 80% of what their male counterparts earned. That's a pretty big gap. It's better than it was, but we still don't command the same salaries that our husbands, boyfriends, fathers, and brothers do. We're stuck with that. We're changing it, but in the meantime, it's a reality, unfair as it may be. Because the deck is still stacked against us, we women often have to work even harder to support ourselves and our families. In this chapter, we'll look at ways you can close that gap as much as possible, including learning how to find your soul calling, supporting your career with education, volunteering, and being prepared for the multiple career shifts most women go through. What is your soul calling? When you have a change in career, whether it's a conscious choice to work less, a forced choice because your employer is downsizing, or you're making the shift toward retirement, the change is an opportunity to redirect your life and say, now it's going to be on my terms. That is the time to follow your passion, or what I call your soul calling. Figure out the other things you can do. Evaluate your talents to see what you're good at and where you can make money. You might have a passion you want to pursue, even if you made your money in another industry. If you're open to the opportunity, your soul calling can redirect you to something that is so much better than the job you didn't like, that you only did for the money. I'll show you how to determine what your soul calling may be in the activity at the end of this chapter. Everybody has a talent. When you follow your talent and mission to help people, you will experience a kind of pull or draw toward activities
that utilize your talent. It's almost like you can't not do it. You keep finding yourself using that talent. It just comes out. You can't keep it locked up in a box. We all wear different hats and work in different careers, but the strong talent that is your driving force is your own. When you're doing it, you could do it for free. Sometimes you are doing it for free because that's how it shows up. You're not going to be able to get away from it. You can pretend. You can try to do something else to make money. Maybe that pays for the moment to pay your bills, but in the long run, you'll be continually drawn to your purpose. That feeling of being drawn towards something means the activity aligns with your core values and your life purpose, the vision of who you are. It's the shoe that fits your foot. When you enjoy what you're doing, you think, they're going to pay me for this? That's awesome. I have a client named Lady whose husband surprised her by asking for a divorce. He came home, said, I'm in love with someone else, and he was done. One day everything was fine, and the next day he was gone, leaving her alone with her 3 kids. She was caught totally off guard. When she came to me to figure out what to do next, we looked at her skills, past experiences, and different options. Lady told me how, when she was a young girl and teenager, she took cake decorating classes, and her cakes won prizes and awards. She made beautifully decorated cakes that looked like famous people or Disney characters. She would sell them to her family and friends who wanted fancy birthday cakes. Sometimes Lady would bake these cakes for free and give them as gifts for the holidays because baking is her passion. Now that's what she does for a living. She followed what seemed like the natural next step and started a cake decorating business. Lady works out of a professional kitchen baking sugar-free, gluten-free cakes for the health-conscious and regular ones for people without dietary restrictions. And the sugar-free ones cost even more than the regular ones. She's super happy, but she had to be resourceful and go back to her own skills. She probably wouldn't do so well designing a house, for example, but she can decorate a cake. After the divorce, Lady didn't have the option of not working. She had kids to take care of and bills to pay. Now she's blessed with being able to finally live her passion. She was able to take back some of her power, to make a choice about what she does instead of letting that situation dictate how her life was going to go. She's in charge of what her career looks like. Back to school. Sometimes you may need to supplement your experience with additional education before you can pursue your dream career. While I was working on the revisions of this book, I took some time off to go out to dinner. The restaurant was pretty empty, so I struck up a conversation with the hostess and waitress, who turned out to be 2 amazing ladies. Both Stacy and Judy are single moms, raising their children on the wages they earn at the restaurant. Stacy confided that she had her first child when she was a child herself, at the young age of 16. She never graduated high school. Now at 48, she's a mother and grandmother, working 2 jobs and dreaming of someday earning a college degree somehow. When Stacy took her break, we got out a piece of paper and worked through the Boots formula. Thanks to raising kids and helping out in school offices for many years, I had some really good news for Stacy. Just because she dropped out of high school didn't mean she had to start all over in order to get a college degree and find her dream job. The best route for anyone in this situation is to go to the local community college. The counselor there can walk you through ways to take college courses or college-level examination program CLEP tests, which allow you to take exams to earn college credits. They may even be able to help you get both your general education and high school credits at the same time. Most colleges even offer free tutorial centers. It may take a few extra years to catch up, particularly if you can only go part-time while you're working, but each class is a step toward achieving your dreams. Until Stacy and I talked, she thought it would be impossible to ever go to college. She promised to keep in touch and even invited me to her graduation. I'll be there with boots on. What are some things you're not doing because someone told you they're impossible? There are always ways around things, through things, or over things. The most important thing to do is to put your boots on and start taking the first steps. Back to school on a budget. But Sheila, you may be thinking, there's no way I can afford to go back to school, even if that education would help me make more money in the long run. To that I say, how can you afford not to? Judy, the other woman at the restaurant, overheard my conversation with Stacy and confessed she felt like it might be too late to become a flight attendant and travel the world, something she had been dreaming of since she was a little girl. She said that she'd looked into going back to school but was thinking maybe it would be wiser to just take a course in bartending to make more money. I asked Judy, if your daughter told you this is what she'd always wanted to do, yet she could earn an extra $1 an hour doing something that wasn't aligned with her goals, what would you tell her to do? She laughed, but she got serious when I followed up. What is your happiness worth? The secret that most people are not aware of is that if you have lower incomes, are a single parent, and are on a budget, you can get help going back to school. You will most likely qualify for some form of grants and financial aid for books and course materials, as well as class fees at the community college level. This also works for higher education, but unfortunately the fees are higher and there are fewer grants. So higher education degrees may require shopping around at a few colleges to find one that fits your time and financial budget and gets you to the career of your choice. Don't worry so much about the name of the university. The degree and training are the important part. If you end up needing to get a student loan, they are usually deferred at 0 to very low interest while you are enrolled at least in 6 units. Be sure to check this information for your specific college and state before signing for any loans. And please don't take any debt if you don't need to. Be sure to start paying back your loans immediately, even if it's a little each month. You're allowed to make payments on those loans even though they're not due until after you graduate. While they aren't accruing high interest, now is the time to just hack away at them a little bit at a time. Another bonus about returning to school during a life shift is that once you start to get some of the course material in, many colleges offer work study or paid apprentice positions. This will give you experience in a related field, which can help you get hired in your dream job. A rock-bottom situation may be a wonderful opportunity to return to school. Take up that career you've always wanted to pursue and use that increased income to pay off any high-interest debts and build your credit score. Then enjoy the gift of a new training and career, which may be the best part of whatever caused you to return to school. These days, entire industries can shift in an instant, so going back to school at any age is not uncommon. Feel free to use this affirmation that I shared with Judy before promising to attend her graduation from flight attendant school someday as well. I am a lifelong learner and a wisdom earner. Volunteering. Sometimes our career shifts start as unpaid opportunities. When considering what you want to do next, you might want to think of what you'd be happy doing without even getting paid. And then go do that. Get started volunteering. If you really want to work with animals, that might mean volunteering at the animal shelter. If you want to write, you might volunteer to write for a nonprofit. You're going to do that, and the people who may be able to give you a position in the career that you love will see you. When you're out there giving back in contribution, they see how you connect with everybody and think, I need someone like that. I wonder if she'd be interested in a job. The next thing you know, you're doing what you want to do. They'll see that you're not even getting paid to do this little part-time gig and understand that it's something you would love to do even if they paid you nothing. But you're never going to get that opportunity if you're just sitting and doing the job that doesn't fit and then going home and feeling sorry about it. Instead, focus on what you truly want to be doing, what you love and care about and are good at, no matter how much or if it pays. The jobs I told you about in the introduction, working for JPL and the phone company while I was building up my stores, were the last time I applied for a job. That's not to say I haven't worked, though. I was given positions I never applied for because I volunteered first and they saw who I am. The next thing you know, I got the position. I've received great opportunities that led to high-paid positions as a teacher and consultant because I volunteered. Again, this is the Sheila Mack Show, reality at its finest, and I'm giving you some homework. Grab a copy of my latest book, Bootstraps and Bra Straps, the formula to go from rock bottom back into action in any situation. That's right. If life has knocked you down, get ready to pick yourself back up and give your problems the boot.